The Shakedown by Will Weisbaum. The fact that he did not get stopped at all going through security was enough to convince him that maybe his luck had really started to turn around. Stepping outside, what had been a dull hum turned into the roar of a city thrumming with activity. People flowed around him in a seemingly endless stream of humanity. Salesmen and executives in crisp clothing mingled with haulers and factory workers in greasy jumpsuits. Several Banu worked their way through the crowd selling hot tea from dispensers mounted on their backs, while at the fringes, scrappers collected the population's jetsam for resale. Overhead, bright neon ads blared slogans and jingles over the din of the crowd, who in turn shouted even louder to be heard over the noise. Mix in the sound of constant ship traffic and it was overwhelming to the point where a few seconds in and you felt the sound pulsing through your body more than you were able to actually hear it anymore. Ahead, Berkeley saw the large spinning gear sculpture that marked the centre of the city, and realised that he had allowed the crowds to push him past his turn. Going across the stream of pedestrians, he jostled his way back towards the Trade and Development Centre. Catching his breath for a moment underneath the sculpture, he wondered if it was supposed to represent the harmony of the city all working together, or if it was implying that they were all just cogs in some grand machine. Who knows? Maybe ArcCorp had simply needed something to do with a bunch of extra gears. Long lines stretched outside the TDD. For a moment he feared that people were waiting to access the commodity trading facilities, but with relief realised that most were there for the job well. Even with as many opportunities as Area 18 had on offer, it seemed there were never enough to go around. So many people came to ArcCorp looking for work that employers could afford to be highly selective. Any opening would have dozens of people competing for the same slot, and even then, they were usually short-term, low-paying gigs. Despite all that, more people kept showing up every day. Berkeley was thankful that he had been able to find a path for himself that had so far kept him well away from the struggles of trying to survive as a day worker. With a friendly nod to those waiting, he moved quickly past the lines and into the TDD itself. It was a surprisingly grand room to hold so many people arguing. The high sweeping ceiling swallowed up the sounds of trades being negotiated at a furious pace. His eyes found Agresium on the large ticker board and happily noted that the price had actually levelled off. It wasn't going to be as big of a score as he had originally hoped, but all said and done, he was going to come away with a nice, tidy profit. Maybe the first thing he'd do after the trade went through would be to get a drink, or maybe a shower. Hard to say which one he needed more. He logged in at the kiosk and brought up his account, and felt his stomach do a flip. The inventory list was completely empty. Maybe they just hadn't finished unloading. He waited a minute, staring up at the ticker. The price had begun to fall again. He tapped refresh on the screen. Nothing. Then a little voice in the back of Berkeley's head broke through the gnawing panic he was feeling and pointed out that not even the first pallet that he had watched being unloaded was listed. Berkeley was already heading to the exit. Sure enough, upon returning to pad 206, he found Kamari and Stack were gone and that his ship had been emptied. The blackjack security officer who showed up a few hours later to take his report verified as much. "Yeah, looks like they took all of it," said Officer Frobisher, shining a flashlight unnecessarily around the hold. "A little free advice for you. Next time, stick to hiring verified workers." "I'll try to remember that," said Berkeley. "What do you think the odds are at recovering my property?" "Well, that's up to you now, isn't it?" "How do you figure?" "Finding lost property isn't easy. We're looking at a lot of hours investigating, talking to suspects, hunting down clues and whatnot. That all costs credits," explained Frobisher. "Are you seriously trying to shake me down?" "Not sure what you're implying, sir. I'm just trying to see that justice is served to the best of my abilities. Would be a shame if I got distracted," said Frobisher, walking down the ship's ramp towards Berkeley. "For example, says here that you were arrested for smuggling a year back. Can't help but wonder if that has anything to do with what's going on here. How do I even know there was any cargo here in the first place? Hell, this whole thing could be some insurance scam you're trying to pull." Once he heard his smuggling record mentioned, Berkeley knew he had two options here. One, he could keep protesting and probably be brought in as a suspect. Once in custody, chances were he could get out eventually, but with his past and the fact that all the law here was handled by private security contractors like Blackjack, it made that a riskier proposition than it should be for an innocent man in the Empire. Funny thing was, Berkeley didn't even have insurance on the cargo. Not that it would really matter. They would just find something else to pin on him, and the result would still be not getting his property back. He had been incarcerated once in his life. He wasn't going to let it happen again. The other option was giving Frobisher a bribe. Berkeley guessed that he didn't have enough credits to actually get his case investigated, but maybe he would have enough to get Frobisher to back off. It shouldn't have surprised him that on ArcCorp, even the cops were a for-profit institution. In the end, the bribe actually took less money than Berkeley would have guessed, but still enough that he was now officially broke. He had always thought that his throw caution to the wind attitude was one of his better personality traits, but now, lying in the dark cot of a ship he couldn't afford to fly, he was starting to second-guess himself in a very unhelpful way. He probably should have gotten the insurance instead of doubling down on the cargo. He probably shouldn't have hired 2 random people to unload his ship without thoroughly vetting them. He probably shouldn't have agreed to deliver a package for a friend all those months ago without knowing exactly what was inside of it. A few hours ago, he had arrived on ArcCorp with a ship full of possibilities, and here he was, destitute. He owned his own spacecraft, but didn't have enough credits to pay off his landing fees. Plus, even if he did, he didn't have the funds to buy fuel to fly anywhere. He couldn't borrow money because he had maxed his credit. He could try and get a job, but with his record, and now no ship, there was little work he was qualified for. The contracts he could get were sure to be barely enough to live off, let alone get off-world. He could maybe find someone to buy his ship. That would net him some credits, but then he'd still be stuck here without a job and no place to sleep. There was at least still one thing he could accomplish today. Pushing himself off the bunk, Berkeley turned and went to blow the last of his money on a drink. Some of the helpful downtrodden folks still queued up in the job well line were kind enough to point him to a bar where he could get blasted for a reasonable price. G-Lock was the kind of place that specialised in being generic. There were satable posters on the wall, a near-empty dance floor playing popular music from 5 years ago, loud enough to keep conversations private, and the drink options ranged from cheap and drinkable to top-shelf bottles kept mostly for show. There was an interesting mix of customers. 2 people surrounded by bags and boxes toasted to their successful shopping trip. An old vet sat by himself at a high-top table, laughing loudly at the muted commercial on the vid screen. Crowded into the corner booth, a gaggle of factory workers in matching ArcCorp uniforms silently contemplated their beers. Berkeley sat at the bar, nursing a serviceable tequila reposado and watching a drunk hauler flail on the dance floor all by himself. He asked the bartender to top him off with ice, hoping to make the drink last a little bit longer. To his surprise, the bartender added ice and a little more tequila. On the house, no one around here drinks the stuff anyway. Thanks. You have no idea how bad I needed that. Tough day? Even though he felt like a cliché for doing it, Berkeley wound up telling the bartender the whole story of how his entire life went pear-shaped. Rather than provide some sage wisdom to help him cope, the bartender gave Berkeley a friendly nod and went off to help another customer. You knew your problems were serious when even a bartender looked grim. You know where you went wrong? Berkeley turned to face the grizzled woman sitting next to him. She, however, continued to carefully watch her red wine as she swirled it around the glass. I know exactly where I went wrong. Several times over, in fact, he answered. You thought those blackjack bastards would actually do anything to help you. Fat chance. She took a large gulp of wine. The only ones they look out for are themselves. A lot of people learn that lesson the hard way. Yeah, tell me about it. Wasn't talking about you. The drunk dancer stumbled and knocked over a glass with a loud crash. The bartender swore under his breath and went to clean it up. Once the bartender was out of earshot, the woman leaned in closer to Berkeley and said, If you're serious about getting your cargo back, I might know someone who can help. I don't have any money to pay for help. She doesn't work that way. You said you did some smuggling, right? I said I got arrested for smuggling once, but that's not me. I trade clean. And how's that been working out for you? The sting of this assessment hurt more than Berkeley would care to admit. He had tried to live his life right, and all it had netted him so far was the societal equivalent of a back-alley shakedown. Fine, I'll bite. Who is she? She likes to say she's a freelance time manager, but what's important is that there isn't much going on in Area 18 she doesn't know about. Hell, she might be arranging the sale of your cargo right now anyway. Come on, I'll introduce you. With that, the woman killed her drink and slid off her stool. She went to the door and turned, waiting to see if Berkeley was going to follow. Berkeley himself wasn't sure if he was going to follow or not. The first time he had become a criminal, it had been an accident. One that seemed like he had been paying for over and over again. Maybe it was time that he got a little payback of his own. Berkeley tilted back his drink, but it was already empty. He put the glass down, tipped the bartender with his last credit, and throwing caution to the wind, stood up to follow.
The Tobii Eye Tracker 5 is on sale until the 28th of July. They are natively supported in Star Citizen, giving you precision head and eye tracking that can help with immersion, as well as adding another level of control to your toolset. It's a cool piece of tech that you can use for streaming and seeing where your eyes are going, and loads of other games are supported too. Check out my links below to get one of those at discount. There are so many space games. Star Citizen is obviously king. Fight me. But how do you keep yourself secure and private while in space, away from the prying eyes of Big Pirate and Big Space? NordVPN.com/BoredGamer. That gives you potentially the best protection in cyberspace. Oh, see what I did there? Stay safer online with a secure private internet connection that also helps you get access to the content you want. Let me give you some testimonials that I'll just make up now. I just turned off NordVPN and got ganked by a load of pirates. I turned off NordVPN and my legs fell off. There you have it. Get NordVPN, because if you're not going to believe those testimonials that I just made up, what are you going to believe? You can grab it from the links below. It's good and it's super cheap and I use it. There you go. Boom. Something else that's good is our ship giveaway. Salvage is the newest big gameplay loop at the moment in-game, and we want to help you get involved with that, so we're giving away a Drake Vulture light salvage ship with lifetime insurance. All you need to do to be in for a chance of winning that is comment on any of my videos made during July. More details in the description below. Thank you so much to everyone that goes the extra mile in supporting the channel with the join button under our videos, or becoming a Patreon, or donating, or even just subscribing and liking and commenting on our videos and sharing them. You'll get an occasional exclusive video. There's polls and posts to get involved with. Please consider joining them, because it really, really helps us out. Thank you very much for watching. If you've got any feedback, please chuck it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you.